Alright, maybe in one of these takes I'll actually get this video done. Today we're going to talk about the batch of knives I sent off to Kurt for the PMI scan and Rockwell testing. And I was really curious about the Civivi here. It took a whole lot of sharpenings before I saw the maximum performance that I was going to get out of it, and it was on the low side for D2. I felt it was on the low side for D2 especially compared to some of the other knives that I tested. It's also funny that LTK put his video out yesterday, and he also sent one of these in at the same time I did. However, just like he says, same knife, different batches, they couldn't be more different. Mine took till the 5th and 6th edge to back up the numbers and show maximum performance. Here's a scan of mine. It did come in as D2. I looked over the composition and it is in fact D2. What's interesting though is mine came in at 59 HRC. And there's the divot right there. Yes, it's dirty. I haven't cleaned it yet since all the testing I did. I find that interesting because LTK's was, I believe it was, I think it was a little over 2 points higher than mine. Like 61.5 HRC. I would love to test that one against this one. Now, Mike, who provided this to me for the channel, also has a black one that he is going to send. I will send it off to Kurt to get scanned, to get a Rockwell test, and then I will put the same angle, same edge finish on it, and I will cut test it to see if his also comes back at 59. Does it do the same as this one did at 59? Or if Mike's comes back at, say, 61, what kind of gain do we see over 2 points in HRC on the same model? So that's definitely going to be interesting. You will see more of this not cutting, but when we talk about Mike's example and what it actually comes back at and what kind of performance we can get out of it. Next up, we have the Buck 203. Came in the Christmas pack. Is made in China. When I got this, I didn't particularly like the looks of the handle, red and black. I did like the blade shape. I started cutting with it, and it did fantastic. So I did some more cutting with it. And when I did a video about it a few months ago, my thought was that they used the wrong steel to make these. I don't know if the small ones are the same. I will send the small one in to Kurt, but right now the big one, I thought they used the wrong steel because the performance that I was getting out of this was way above 420. So sure enough, I sent it in. This is what we came up with. It read as Chronodor 3, but when you compare the composition of the steel, it is extremely close to 14C28N. And that makes a lot of sense because the cut test you haven't seen yet put it right in with 14C28N as far as performance goes. There's a little divot right there. This came back at 57 HRC, and that is also what a lot of 14C28 comes back as. as far as a Rockwell goes, right in that 57 range. So for a $20 2-pack, if you picked one of these up, you definitely got a really sweet deal. I don't think there's anywhere else you're going to get Sandvik 14C28 on a knife for under $20. And to go even further, I did have two of these at one time, and they were both very close. It is a pretty thin hollow grind, and I don't recall what the edge angle is. I'm pretty sure it's close to 15, but I'll definitely double check before I sharpen it again to do a test. But it is only about 15 thousandths behind the edge, so it is an excellent cutting knife. The next one up is the Cold Steel Tough Lite. I sent this in ahead of time to Kurt to test. I was curious. I've used this quite a lot. The performance on it, I feel, is great. There's our divot right there. I will be testing this one to find out how it does, how it compares to the Ontario AUS 8 that I did. I will also be sending the Ontario pair in to Kurt to PMI and Rockwell to see what they come back as. Now, I don't believe AUS 8 is in the PMI gun, but I did compare the composition and everything matches up with AUS 8. I have no reason to believe it's anything else, and this did come back at 59 HRC. It will be, I'm looking forward to seeing what the Ontario AUS 8 comes back at and how the performance of this knife and that knife stack up next to each other. If the Rockwell ends up being that close and the performance ends up being that close as well. Next up is the Benchmade 551. This is the Cabela's exclusive in D2. There's our divot right there below the thumb stud. I have had this knife for well over a year, and I personally put more than enough edges on it to know that I was no longer in any fatigue steel. It did very well in cut testing, I feel, for D2. It did about 125 feet fine edge and just shy of 140 feet for working edge. And those are important figures you'll see again in the future with D2. This did come back as no match. Kurt said that it wouldn't read all the way through the coating. And as you can see, the chromium is a little low. A couple of the other elements are a little low for D2. I'm positive Benchmade's using D2 for this. This did come back at 59.3 HRC. So now we're seeing 59 HRC, 59.3 HRC. Now we definitely know the heat treat on the Benchmade is better on the D2 than it is on the Civivi, because I never worked up the percentages, but just going off the top of my head, it's over 25% better in fine edge and close to 40% better in working edge over the Civivi D2. So even though it's only 0.3 difference in Rockwell, the heat treat on this is a whole lot better than it is on the Civivi. This came out recently. I believe I picked it up right before I sent this particular group of knives off to Kurt. I only had it a couple days. I sent it to him to get scanned and get a Rockwell number on it. There's our divot right there. It did scan as D2. You look at the composition, it falls in with D2. Everything's good. I will be testing this one to see how well the CRKT heat treat is on D2, because this came back at 58.3 Rockwell. So I'm curious to see, even though it's only 58.3, is their heat treat good enough that it's going to be better than the Wyvern or even close to the 551? We're definitely going to find out. I've already started putting edges on it, same as always, same grit and everything. I'm prepping this one to be tested real soon, so we will be able to find out before long how this does, and then we can kind of get an idea of how well the heat treat is after I get some testing done on that. The last one is, and I have two of these. This is the earlier one that I have. My newer one, I believe, is somewhere around 20,000 serial numbers higher than this. It's well into the 40,000 serial numbers. This is 26403. So at first Kurt tried to scan this through the coating and it came back with no match, and the composition was just not there. So he asked me if he could take the handles off. I said, yeah, go ahead and do whatever you have to do. He took the handles off. He got a bare spot. He did test it. Came back as a low alloy carbon. If you look at it, no reason to not believe that it is not 1095. Now, I don't know if it is this particular example, but I have not had really good luck with this particular Izula 2 holding an edge. Now, my newer one, it does great. I have zero issues with my newer one. This one, however, when I do use it, it came back at a 56.4 Rockwell. However, it seems to be much lower than that in actual use. Now, I'm not saying that the Rockwell test is wrong. Just maybe that something is funny with the heat treat on this particular knife. And as you can see from the, if I had my other one here to compare, you'd be able to see. If I had to guess, this has been sharpened well over 20 times, if not more. I am going to do some more cutting with this. I did go ahead and put another edge on it. And just so you guys know, just since I've had it, and it's probably somewhere in the 8 to 10 month range, this will be the 6th edge that I've put on here. So I am going to do some more cutting with this. I already know this does not do well against harder materials like zip ties or anything like that. It doesn't like running into, I have a plastic work cart. Doesn't like the edge banging into the plastic work cart to do any kind of press cutting or anything like that. So I'm going to have to be careful what kind of cutting I do and see. I know you shouldn't have to be careful cutting to get a knife to stay sharp, but I'm going to do some more cutting with it and see how it does. That's all I have for this batch. I do have some more off at Kurt right now. A bunch of M390 and some S90V. I believe that's all I sent in the second batch. The third batch will be a big mix of different stuff. But I do want to thank Kurt once again. Without him, we wouldn't be able to compare all this. This knowledge wouldn't be possible for us. I do love how the results are backing up what different ones of us are saying. Like LTK just said in his latest video, how just because it's the same knife, same steel, same company from a different batch, doesn't mean it's going to be the same. I've said it before. You've heard Super Steel Steve say it a whole bunch of times. Whatever you're doing with a knife, that PMI scan, Rockwell test, and edge retention test that I did with this Civivi only applies to this Civivi. It'll give you a general idea of what yours will do, but without doing the same type of test or actually sending your knife to Kurt, yes, it might be close. For all we know, it could be spot on, but without your own independent test, there's no way to know whether the example I tested will compare to the example you have. So I hope you guys like this one. I'm looking forward to doing more of these. I'm really enjoying this. All the different testing that's going on with the PMI gun, the Rockwell test, to then correlate with the edge retention testing that a few of us are doing. I'm really liking that. So that's all I have for this. As always, I appreciate your time, and thanks for watching.